Hi, and welcome to the 20th video in our C# for Beginners tutorial series. We've been looking at some collections in the past. We've seen some arrays, some array lists, and today we are going to be looking at actually lists. So this kind of finds itself in the middle of an array and array list, and we're going to be finding out why I'm saying that in just a few moments. It has some pros and cons of each. And you definitely might find them more useful than an array sometimes, less useful than an array list sometimes, but also you might still end up using arrays, especially multi-dimensional arrays or jagged arrays. So let's actually go ahead and let's get started in seeing what a list is and how to declare one and how to use one. So to first create a list here, we are going to create a list. Now, a list is a generic collection, so what we actually have to do is declare the type inside of these greater than, less than signs here. So we're going to go ahead and put int here. So we're going to be creating a list of integers, and we're going to create our list of integer called lst numbers. We're going to make that equal to a new list int, and then open and closing parentheses. So this will generate a list, an empty list of integers. Now you can create a list of strings, you can create a list of custom classes as well, which we will come and see custom classes very shortly in the more advanced topics, but you can create a list of any data type. But the thing is, it does have to be only one data type. So unlike array lists where we were allowed to have doubles, integers, and strings all in one array list, this is more similar to an array where it has to be one type and only that type. But the benefit to the list compared to the array is the size. It can grow and shrink, so we can add and remove items as we please, very similarly to the array list, which is why I kind of say it's kind of in the middle. It's got some features of an array, it's got some features of an array list, which is kind of where array list got its name. But let's actually go ahead and see how we can add numbers to it, how we can iterate through them. And we're going to be seeing actually a new method that we haven't seen yet. So that should be actually pretty fun for you guys. So let's add some numbers here that we would actually do by lst numbers dot add. And we're going to add the number 11. And let's just go ahead and let's copy this and let's add the number 13. Let's add the number 8, the number 22, add the number 13 again, and let's add the number 25. All right, so we have a bunch of numbers here. Now let's go ahead and let's iterate through these this lists. Now we're going to iterate them two ways, as we've seen before. They're always pretty much the same way. It's going to be a for each loop and a for loop. So let's actually just console write line, and let's just specify that the first one is going to be the for each loop. So let's do a for each. We're going to do int I in lst numbers. And then in here, we are just going to console.writeLine the value of I. If we go ahead and we run this here, we are going to see our list prints out nicely. Everything is there as expected. So now let's take a look at the for loop. So once again, I'm just going to write a line here, just calling it for loop. And let's go and let's set up our for loop. So as we know, we need a counter. So we're going to set that up as I. I needs to be less than the lst numbers. And for a list, it's going to be dot count, not dot length. So you always have to kind of make sure with new collections that you're using that you kind of check the dot notation, make sure that it's either dot length, dot count, or any other collections that you might use. Maybe they will use something different. So we're going to do a console.writeLine lst numbers square bracket I square bracket. So again, very similarly to an array or an array list, we're always specifying it with that square bracket notation. So let's take a look at that. Now, here we have our two methods of looping through it. We have the identical values. So let's see how we can actually remove from these lists. So we can actually remove from these lists by actually specifying the exact number. We can specify the index, and we will see this new method called RemoveAll, which will remove all instances of an item. So let's actually go ahead and let's see if we can remove a number. So let's do LST numbers dot, and let's remove 13 here. All right, and we are doing that before our for loop. So our for loop will actually show us the removed item, the list after the item's been removed. So here we have 11, 13, 8, 22, 13, and 25 was our for each loop. So that is the original list. And then after it becomes 11, 8, 22, 13, and 25. So the remove only removes the first instance, like we've seen in other array lists. It always just removes that first instance. If we write it twice, we will see that now the two instances of 13 are gone. We only have 11, 8, 22, and 25. So let's actually see a newer method here that we haven't seen. Actually, let's do one simple one first. Let's do the remove at, and let's remove at index. Let's remove at index 2. As we can see, index 2 would be the number 8. So let's see if it removes number 8. And there we have it. So we have 11, 13, 22, 13, and 25 now. It did remove number 8. All right, so now let's see the new method like I was talking about a little bit earlier, which was the dot. So here we have a dot remove at, which we've seen both of those already. We've seen remove range, which you give it the start index and then the number of items that you want to remove. But there is this remove all here. And as we can see, in the remove all, we actually have an option here which removes all the elements that matches the conditions defined by the specified predicate. Now, that will actually be very, very handy, but we need to find out how to create or how to perform a predicate. Now, a predicate is actually a Boolean pretty much. So if we actually go ahead and just do predicate, and we do a predicate int because that's what the our LST numbers is expecting, and let's just call it test, and let's call it new predicate int, and here we have our bool and then int target. So let's actually find out how we can do that here. So what we need to do a dot remove all. So let's just set up, and we have here that we need to put in a match. What that will actually require is for us to create a function. Now this is going to be a function that returns a Boolean, so we already know that we need to do a bool here. And let's call this, let's remove all the items that are 13 first. We're going to start off with a pretty simple example. So is 13, and we are actually going to pass in an integer, and that integer is going to be I. We're going to do an open and closing curly bracket. And what we need to do here is we need to return the I dot equals 13. So this will actually return if I is equal to 13. So it'll return true if you pass in 13, and it'll return false if you pass in anything else. And we can actually just take a look at that real quick here. So after our for loop, let's do a console.writeLine is 13, and let's pass in the number 14 first. And we're going to go ahead and pass the number 13 afterwards. So we should see a false and true here. And there we have it. So we have false and true. So we know that our function is working. So if we actually do a LST numbers dot remove all 13, Oh, sorry. We need to do is 13. So what we're doing is we're actually passing in the function into the RemoveAll, and the RemoveAll will actually pass in each item from that list into this function, and it will either return true or false, and every time that it returns true, it will actually remove that number. So let's actually see what that happens here. So there we have it, 11, 8, 22, and 25. We've returned all the numbers that are 13, we've removed them. But let's say we actually wanted to do something a little bit more intensive. Let's say we get a list, but we actually don't want any numbers that are even. So we want to remove all the evens. So let's do an is even, and let's do an int I here, open and closing curly brackets, and we're going to do return I modulo 2, and we're going to wrap that here, dot equals 0. So now if we actually test this out here, so let's do a console.writeLine is even. So let's do 2. And let's do an is even with 3. So we should, in theory, get a true and false here. And there we have it. So we have true and false. So we know that our function is working. So now let's remove all is even. So this is going to remove all the even values. So if we look at the even values here, we're going to be removing 8 and 22. Let's see here. All right, and there we have it. So we have 11, 13, 13, and 25. So we've removed all the even values. So if ever you see something that requires like a predicate, you might just need to create a function and you can actually get rid of a lot more items based on a function that you create. So you have tons of flexibility here. These are two. This one was very, very simple. This one may be a little bit more complicated, but should still be pretty easy to understand at this point. So that is pretty much it for lists here. We've seen how to remove items. We've seen how to add items. We've seen how to iterate through them. We've seen the differences and similarities to arrays and array lists. And we've even seen a new method of RemoveAll and then creating a function to pass into that other function to remove a bunch of items. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know down below in the comment section. If you guys have anything that I think a lot of people would benefit from, I will also create a video. If it's a little bit more specific, I'll just answer you directly. Please be sure to subscribe and like this video, and also hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out, and I will see you guys on the next video.